Hello.
Hey Harold, how are you?
I'm good. Good. How was Yom Kippur?
Baruch Hashem, very nice.
That's good.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was not too hot this year, thank God.
No, 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 no. It was perfect. How about yours? How was your Yom
Yeah,
Kippur?
same. It was very nice. Very. I don't know if pleasant is the right word.
Yeah.
It was
Meaningful.
doable. Didn't have any trouble fasting this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, Baruch Hashem, that's very true. Yep, yep, yep. Yeah,
Where did we end up
it's
last week?
pretty
I don't
easy.
remember more.
It was pretty easy.
Yeah. Hey, Mario, do you know where we ended up last week?
No, I wasn't here.
Oh,
I mean,
I thought I marked it.
Yaakov, you don't remember?
Oh, I see. It's
Hmm?
yeah, 291, I think.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I wasn't here either. I've been gone. I was away the last 2 weeks.
So it's 291, Harold.
I think so. That's why I have a page turned over here.
Okay, very good.
Uh, you're tired, Harold.
Yeah,
Why?
I woke up very early,
Oh, okay.
not on purpose. Woke up at 4 o'clock. I couldn't go back to sleep.
But you were not up as early as 8. He
Oh,
was
no.
in China this morning.
That's right. Yeah, he walked all the way from China.
Yeah.
Abe, you flew Cathay Pacific?
No, United.
Oh, United.
They have a direct flight.
Oh, good.
Which one?
United.
Asia or something like that?
Hmm?
Which airline?
United Airlines.
United. Hmm. How many hours is it?
15 and a half.
Wow. You're not tired? You don't have jet lag?
I'll feel it till later on today. I'll probably be up at 3 o'clock in the morning again.
Oh, okay.
Takes a couple of days.
Because it's 16 hours ahead, right?
Like
Hi, Bernie.
15. 15.
Hey, Bernie, I saw your grandson in Shul this morning.
Which one?
No, Bernie's grandson.
Oh, hello. Oh, yeah, I came to the Young Israel.
Yeah, what's his name?
Eitan.
Eitan, nice
He's
boy.
he's busy building a sukkah now in the pitch dark.
Oh God.
His own
What's
little
it for?
pop-up on our terrace so he can observe to the ultimate extent. He's sleeping in the
Good.
sukkah.
Oh my God.
He will be, not yet, though.
Not yet.
You want to say hello? That's okay.
I think we're on 291.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We have that Torah.
We finished the halachos of Shnai Mikra and Echad Targum last week. So we're going to deal with Kriyas Torah on Shabbos. In volume 12, we did discuss Kriyas Torah during the week. And the general halachos that apply every time we read from the Torah. And this year we'll deal with the halachos that apply specifically to reading Torah on Shabbos. The Mishnah in Masechta Gila records a requirement that at least 7 people read from the Torah on Shabbos, and that when we also read, we must also read a Haftorah from the Nevi'im. B'Shabbos Shiva ein poichsin mehen v'mosif lehem. Of course, those of us who grew up in Shtiblach know that you can add that's hoysafas umaftir benavi, but you can't have less than 7. The Gemara explains the significance of why we have different number of aliyos. Hani shloisha chamisha shiva keneged me. So we have 3 aliyos Monday and Thursday, 5 aliyahs on Yontif, 7 aliyahs on Shabbos. Of course, we have 6 aliyahs on Yom Kippur. So what is this 357 motif? Chad Amar Keneged Birchas Kohanim. Similarly, the first bracha, Yivarech Hashem Yishmerech, has 3 words. The second bracha has 5 words. The third bracha has 7 words. And that's 357. Chad Amar Keneged Shloisha Shemrei Asaf, Chamishe Meroe Pnei HaMelech, and Shiva Roe Pnei HaMelech. These are discussions in Malachim Beis and in Esther, referring to various officers in the palace. The references in these sources follows Rashi. Tosfos argues that Chazal would not have instituted a number corresponding to those close to the wicked Achashverosh, and instead must refer to the 7 mentioned in Yirmiyahu as being close to King Tzidkiyahu. Either way, one can explain that Chazal associated these verses with Kriyas Torah to highlight that reading the Torah should also be deemed a matter of royalty. The Shibbolei Aleket, another Rishon, adds another reason for the 7 readers in the name of the Gaonim. Motzati b'tshuvas haGaonim, Lama korin b'Shabbos b'Torah Shiva, Shem yira la'onos la'odem shelo bala beis hakneses kol Shiva sima shavua. Let's say a person hadn't come to shul all week, Lo shama barchu, and he hadn't heard barchu. Yaz v'pi hakorin Shiva pamim barchu v'yotzei dechovaso. By hearing Baruch from 7 different people, he will fulfill his obligation. The Mishnah stated on Shabbos, it's permissible for more than 7 people to read. The Rav Yah, which is a Rishon, quotes a response of Rabbeinu Ephraim to Rabbeinu Yoel, 2 other Rishonim, regarding a practice to repeat the same verse on behalf of these additional readers, a practice to we objected strongly. Uvesimchas Torah, yotzati m'beis hakneses, b'chori af. The Rav Yosef says, I left the shul on Simchas Torah angry. Ki shamati lebalei hazeh achazim medaleg yotzim raboi poim avur shisha pshitim. He repeated the same verse like 40 times. And because they were collecting money that way, who told him that he's allowed to repeat all these psukim? Remember on Rosh Chodesh, the laning, in order to fit the 4 aliyahs, we have to start from we have to start that twice. We repeat that one pasuk. Otherwise, you don't have 3 psukim for each aliyah. So there's a big machlokes, Rav and Shmuel. You're allowed to do that. There was no choice. They had to be mater. But here we could protest. And if you protest this guy reading psukim over and over, so the Rivash writes that there's no problem with repeating, citing other times when we are forced to repeat. That in the Arabic lands, Yom Simchas Torah or Yom Chupas Chatan, Shekol Bnei Akal, Migdolim V'Aktarim Korim B'Torah, there was a minig, not just on Simchas Torah, but I guess by an off-roof, that everybody would get an aliyah. You have to read the aliyah 5 or 6 times. Is there an isser? Are we repeating the name in God's vein? Maybe it referred to a long parsha. So the answer given by the Rivash, Nirashu Mutter, you're allowed to repeat psukim. There's no problem with reciting Hashem's name. Since they have to lay and they have to make a bracha. Even if you have to repeat the parsha. Sharebi Mechanuka, Shekor ben Nisim, Kohen Velevi, Kohen Kola Parsha ben Shneim, Yisrael Choser. By we do repeat a section, Choser v'Koher, so Kalei Levado. Same thing on Chanukah. The Kriyas Torah comes from a midbar, which records the offering of all the Nisim. According to some opinions, the third Aliyah repeats the same offering of the Nasi read during the first two Aliyahs. This is practiced in Eretz Yisrael. In the Golah, Ashkenazim follow the opinion of the Ramah that one reads the offering of the Nasi the next day, so we don't get that problem. But they have that issue in Eretz Yisrael, and that's not a problem. So both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah allow repetition in principle, although the Ramah writes that Ashkenazi communities limit this practice to Simchas Torah only. Ma'al likros olim arbe. It's mutter likros olim arbe. Aval pi shekor zeh ma shekor zeh v'chozer mevarach. Shulchan Aruch says you can call many aliyahs, you can repeat ein bekach klum. But the Ramah says yesh oisrim. There are those that don't permit. That's the Rav Yah. V'chein nagum dis elu. The Ramah says that in the Western European countries, this is our minig. Chutz me b'simchas Torah shenagul harbos b'korim v'nagul b'svar karishon. He says the exception is Simchas Torah. The Magen Avraham writes that even according to the lenient view, one who does not read any new psukim does not count towards the minimum of 7 readers that you need on Shabbos. The practice in Ashkenazic communities follows the Ramah not to repeat psukim when adding aliyos. The practice in many Sephardic communities is in accordance with the ruling of Shulchan Aruch, which allows to repeat. But some Sephardic poskim, such as the Birkei Yosef, write that where possible repetition should be avoided. Mutter likros olim arbe zed dasa rivash b'tshuva v'rayosav einen machris. He says his proofs aren't that strong. The Harashbat's chelik beis uktzas achronim cholkin b'din zeh kasher yira haro b'sifra achronim. If you look in the Sefer Achronim, v'after nog hochi become a makomis karos arivash maran. You shouldn't protest against those that do it because they have someone to rely on. Who, if somebody's Yirei Shamayim, should not go up to have an aliyah if it's not a new pasuk. The Rav, who's respected by everybody, should yanik shikara olim kula mechadash ezu psukim nosafim. The Magen Avraham discusses whether adding extra readers is permitted at all nowadays, even if it does not involve repetition of verses. In the times of the Mishnah, only the first Ola recited a bracha before reading, and only the last Ola recited a bracha after reading. Thus, adding extra readers did not require extra brachos, as those who read in the middle did not recite any brachos. The Gemara explains that a later takana required all the aliyahs to make a brachos before and after, for the benefit of those who came to shul later, leave early, and they won't realize that someone had made a bracha beginning. As Hosafas now will now need to recite brachos before and after reading, perhaps they constitute unnecessary brachos, which are to be avoided. Says the Magen Avraham, Umashma b'chola poskim, shafilo ha'idna, even today, shekulam mevarchin, that everyone makes their own bracha, muter lo yosif. You're allowed to have osafas. Sharei gam bizman haTalmud haya kol echad mevarech. In the time of the Gemara, everybody made a bracha. V'afilo hachi kosvu kol haposkim shemuter lo yosif came nearly. The lo ka'ola Shabbos. The Ola Shabbos ruled that you're not allowed. Barashbatz Kosav, the Ashav, the Kulam Muvarka, Ein Lo Osif, Mishum Bracha Shein Etzricha. There is an opinion not to do it. V'chein Roy Linigim Lo B'Mokom Chassan O Bris. He says if it wasn't a wedding or a bris, you shouldn't do it. So according to the conclusion of Magen Avraham, it's indeed better to avoid adding extra aliyos, with special dispensation given for special occasions such as a wedding or a brit. Today, practice varies from shul to shul. Many congregations allow extra aliyos. Some limit the numbers in order to avoid causing frustration and quarreling. Umatzinu l'shnai migdolei olam, two of the great gdolim shikpidul olam lo lohisav al shiva krum, never to add more than 7. Va'af lo kashish chatna v'chal, even when there was a simcha. Ach yedu minig olam l'akil b'zeh, even though the minig is to be lenient. Im kimatzenu gdol Yisrael shigbilas v'svar sofos l'shoy shel chad, even though they limited the osafos to 3 or 5. May a minor receive one of the 7 aliyos? Says the Gemara Masechta Megillah Chav Gimel, Ton Rabbanan, Hakol Oilim Leminyan Shiva, Afilu Katan v'Afilu Isha, even a minor, even a woman. Aval Amru Chachamim Isha Lo Tikra B'Torah Mipnei Kavod HaTzibur, which really is a euphemism for tznius. The Shulchan Aruch quotes this halacha, adding that the child may only be called to the Torah if he understands that the brachos address Hashem. The Ramah quotes the opinion of the Ran and other Rishonim that one child may count toward the total of 7 readers, but the 7 may not all be children. The Ran infers his conclusion for the word olin, which he interprets to mean that they are included in the 7, but may not be the only ones called to the Torah for all of the aliyos. Hakol oil in the minyan shiva, says the Shulchan Aruch, afilu isha v'katan, sheyodeh l'mim avarch level amru chachamim isha lo tikra b'tzibur b'nei kavod hatzibur. And the Ramah says ve'elu davka mitztarfin l'minyan akruim, avlo sheykulam nashim aktanim. They can only be one. They can't be all of the 7. The meaning of the expression kavod hatzibur and the question of why women do not receive aliyot are beyond the purview of this shir. He gives you some sources. Okay. The Mogen Avraham writes that although a minor may be given an aliyah and read it himself from the Torah, he may not serve as the Baal Kriya, who reads on behalf of the others receiving aliyot. Of aliyot who makre in a yochel shiyavi stage Cyrus, he has to be bar mitzvah to be the Baal Kriya. We've explained the position of the Mogen Avraham in accordance with the understanding of the Mishnah Berurah. The Levush understands that according to the Mogen Avraham, a minor may not even read for his own aliyah. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein points out that this is difficult. As in times of Chazal, every Olah read his own aliyah, and yet it was permitted for the minor to receive an aliyah. So Rav Moshe didn't understand why the Levush prohibited. The Prima Gadim disputed this ruling, arguing that as Kriyas HaTorah is a rabbinic institution, a minor may read even on behalf of others. Koden Shadain Loevi Stay Cyrus, under Bar Mitzvah, Yachol Likros La'olim Kiminagenu, can read if he's called up. V'yotzim B'shmios Hashem, and there Yotze, the Tikkun Neviimu, Shikru B'Torah. It's a Takona Neviim to read. V'osid Rabbanan Mafit Rabbanan. What? And the rabbis are going to come to uproot a Rabbanan? Shari Kotten Olam in Shiva. The Gemara already said that a Kotten could be called an Aliyah. V'mei Hashas Haya Kotten Oil of a Korbatzmo. Thus, it seems that in principle, a child may receive an Aliyah and read it himself, and according to some, he may even serve as the Baal Kriya. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes at length to prove that the halacha should follow the Magen Avraham, who forbids a minor from reading on behalf of others, even b'shas adchak, under pressing circumstances. His reasoning is that the communal obligation must be to Kriyas HaTorah, rather to hear, rather than to read. As were there to be an obligation to read, a minor who cannot act as an agent on behalf of others could not be allowed even to read his own aliyah. The added requirements for 7 readers is therefore a communal obligation to hear 7 different readers. However, this presents a difficulty, as our practice is for one person to read the entire parsha. The only resolution to this difficulty is that the reader acts as the agent of each ola, but not as an agent of the entire tzibur, and thus it is considered as if the ola is reading himself. This can only work if the reader is an adult, as a child cannot act as an agent for others. Thus, a minor may only read his own aliyah when there's no need for him to act as an agent for other people. However, if a child mistakenly prepared the wrong parsha for his bar mitzvah, such that the relevant Shabbos occurs before he reaches the age of 13, he writes that we cannot protest at one who allows him to read in order to prevent distress to the boy and his family. That I've never seen, but obviously it occurred. V'lachein, af b'shas adchak ein lahakel, v'zeh ki tam muchrach v'tam ha'prim hagodim v'od achronim ha'mekilim b'shas adchak tamua. He says that those that are lenient, he doesn't understand them. Sorchiyim. Aval b'chol makom l'dinim hutzar gadol labar mitzvah mishpach l'vrotza kvot toroso haramah lakel ka'prim hagodim u'di'im ein limchos b'yado. Since the Prima Godim matters, you can rely on him. Rav Ovadia Yosef writes that as the permissibility of a minor reading the entire parsha is disputed, under normal circumstances, we should not allow it. However, if there is no adult who knows how to read accurately, we may rely on the lenient view. Shouldn't be the Balkari. In emergency, with the trop, you can rely on the Prima Godim that the child can learn. With respect to a minor receiving an aliyah, we have seen that in principle this should be permitted. Nevertheless, Ashkenazic communities and many Sephardic communities have customarily only allowed a minor to receive maftir. This is pointed out by the Magen Avram, the Kaf HaChaim. The Magen Avram, Rav Abraham Gumbiner, lived in the mid-1700s. He says, "Va'idna lo neigi likros katan ela maftir." I mean, none of us on this Zoom call has ever seen a katan get an aliyah of the 7 kruyim. Already that was the minig in the time of the Magen Avram 300 years ago, 250 years ago. Maftir they could, but not the regular 7 aliyahs. The Kaf HaChaim 100 years later in Baghdad, Chen Kosav Amati Yehuda, Osvav the Rabbim Nogim Shalol Alus Kotten Klal, Bein B'Shabbos, Bein B'Shayom. And I believe that's the prevailing minig in any of the shuls we've davened in. I mean, where even though la halacha, it seems that the poskim allow a cotton, but that was not the minig. Rav Ovadia Yosef reinforces that according to the letter of the law, it's permitted for a child to receive an aliyah, but he acknowledges that communities that do not allow this practice should follow their custom. With respect to maftir and haftar, although the halacha seems to clearly permit a minor to receive that aliyah and read the haftar, many communities today do not follow this on a regular basis. The reason may be more a result of practical concerns, because the cotton perhaps can't read these things properly. What does the Rav Ovadia Yosef say? Cotton shegi lechinuch, a minor, who knows who to make a bracha to, can count among the 7 kriyim. Whether middle, whether at the end. The koshkein sha'ol aliyas maftir, certainly during maftir, so he can read his parsha, his own aliyah. The shuls that have a minig not to call up a minor should certainly follow their minig.
I've never seen it. I'm sure no one has ever seen it. They call up a cut.
No, it's that's the whole meaning of becoming bar mitzvah. Bar
Right.
mitzvah, now you can get an aliyah.
I tell you, when I was a Rav of a shul, I had the circumstance I just started, and the Rav before me prepared, or I guess there was no Rav for a while. And the Bar Mitzvah, I met with him the week, I just started, met with him the week of Bar Mitzvah, and he prepared the wrong Sedra. And that was a mess. I don't even remember what I did, but it was not
So-
fun.
So you see, Rav Moshe gave a heter. Let's
Right.
say it's
Yes.
a week before they allowed him to read. Did you follow? Did you do that, Yaakov?
You know,
Don't
I
remember.
think you know what it was. He was just doing the Haftorah and he prepared the wrong Haftorah. It was like
Nice.
Mocha Chodesh or something. And I let him read the Haftorah, and then I had someone else come up and read the right Haftorah.
Oh, that
That's
was
what I
good.
did. Yeah,
Good.
that's what it was.
This is Torah.
Long time ago. Happens.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's they don't know the din of Machar Chodesh, many people, right? That they look, they look years in advance. Oh, my bar mitzvah is Beshalach. And they didn't look that Rosh Chodesh is Sunday. And they prepare the Haftorah for Beshalach, and it's really Machar Chodesh. I think that's a mistake that's probably made a lot. So what about Kriyas Torah Mincha on Shabbos? So Ezra instituted the practice of Kriyas Torah Mincha on Shabbos. The Gemara Masechta Baba Kama explains the reason. Asar Takonos Tikin Ezra Shekor b'Mincha b'Shabbos Mishum Yoshvei Kronos. I guess people were bumming around Shabbos afternoon. Rashi explains that those who sit on street corners are those who do not attend the synagogue during the week and can only hear Kriyas Torah on Shabbos. So Yoshvei Chaniyos Koyim Asachol Oskim B'Schoira. These are business people. They can't come to shul. Then Kohen B'Sheni V'Chamishi. So Tokad B'Ginayu Kriya say they added an extra Kriya for them Shabbos afternoon. It's difficult to understand how the enactment of Kriyas Torah on Shabbos afternoon solves the problem that these store owners would not hear the Torah reading during the week for the following reason. As explained in volume 12, the Gemara explains that Ezra instituted reading the Torah Monday and Thursday, so that 3 days would not go by without reading the Torah. But hearing the Torah read on Shabbos afternoon does not rectify their inability to hear the Torah reading for 3 days during the week. The Nachlas Moshe asks this question and suggests that although an additional Torah reading on Shabbos does not rectify the original problem for which the enactment of Kriyas Torah in the week was instituted, it at least allows them to compensate partially for not observing the enactment, which is to at least hear one of the lanings of the next week's parsha. They're going to miss Monday and Thursday. They might as well hear one of it. See also Marsha here as well as Meir and Shidem Kubetzis, who interpret the term Yoshvei Kronos as individuals who may engage in inappropriate activities or become intoxicated on street corners on Shabbos afternoon. That was my thought, due to boredom. And the enactment encourages them to attend shul instead. Okay. What about Maftir and Haftorah? The last Ol on Shabbos and Yontif is the Maftir. In Masechta Megillah, the Amoraim dispute whether the Maftir is one of the Sheva Olim or it's an additional reader. Megillah Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. Iboilu. Maftir Mar Shiala Leminyan Shib. Does the Maftir Aliyah count as one of the 7 Aliyahs? Rav Huna Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba Chad Amar Oile. The Chad Amar Eina Oile. Man Amar Oile. The Hakari. I mean, he read. Why is the person who is given the honor of reading the Maftir, why is he given an Aliyah first? Then they covered a Torah. The given to Mishum covered a Torah, Liminyan lo Solik. It's only Al covered a Torah. So he's not included in the Sheva Kruyim. The Rishonim write that the halacha follows the view that the maftir may be one of the quorum of 7. However, the Rosh adds, in the name of several Rishonim, that whenever possible, our custom is for the maftir to be an additional reader, in order to accommodate both views. Says the Rosh, "V'hilchos maftir ola, v'lakach ananogim b'tainis mincha, u'v'tisha b'av yom kippur b'mincha shashlishi hu maftir." So when we lane Vayichal, or on Tisha B'av, or on Yom Kippur, the third Aliyah gets maftir. Aval b'Shabbos Hashmini maftir, but we call 7 Aliyahs and then maftir on Shabbos. Uviyontav, where you read 5, the maftir is the 6th. Yom Kippur Mashvi l'fi anu rotzim la'asos minagenu alibed kolama. We want to do our minings like everybody. Kach Cheshiv Rabbeinu Tam, Rav Rabbeinu Meshulam, Chen Pasuk Rav Abraham v'Haigon, and even the Gaonim pasuk that way. Although on Shabbos the maftir is counted as a separate aliyah to accommodate all opinions, this cannot be done during the week when there are no more than 3 aliyahs. For this reason, the maftir on a fast day is counted as the third aliyah. The Rosh also explains that our custom to say Kiddush before maftir, to say Kaddish before maftir, is in order to indicate that the maftir is not one of the 7 readers. Tiknu lomar Kaddish ben shvila maftir loymar she'ein memane mashiva v'lkach tzrichim lachzor min haparsha shekor hashvi. You go back to the last aliyah, the 7th aliyah, and you read some of the psukim there. The Shulchan Aruch follows the Rosh. Noagim likor shiva v'ligmor mama parsha v'omer Kaddish v'chozer v'kor maftir ma shekor hashvi. Following Kriyas Torah, Chazal instituted that we should read a section from Nevi'im, which somehow relates to the Parsha. The Tur summarizes some of the requirements of this section to choose. Umaftirim b'Navi minyan shel Parsha. It's got to be in the subject matter. Ve'ein poschim mechafal psukim. We never lane less than 21. Keneged shiva shekar b'Torah. That's 3 times 7 times 3, because he had 7 aliyahs in the Torah. She'ein posin kolechad mishlosh psukim. B'yisak in yana b'botzir. If a topic is covered in less than 21, then you don't need. That's a parshas tzav, which has less, but it's one inyan. We don't have to lane more than that. The Abu Dram explains that Chazal instituted Haftorah due to a decree instituted against the Jews forbidding Kriyas Torah, the Shas Gzeres Hashman. Laman the Maftir b'Nevi'im, if we should gazal Yisrael shelo yikru b'Torah. There was a Gzeira not to read. Keneged Shiva shayu only cross b'Torah, and therefore, because there are 7 aliyahs, vein korn pachos mishleisha, each aliyah has to have at least 3. Im kol echad v'echad tignu likros chafal psukim b'Nevi'im v'lo yifchos me'am. Many achronim, including the Mishnah Berurah, cite this reason for the institution of Haftorah. Although it is not entirely clear when this decree forbidding reading the Torah was enacted, some suggest that the Greek king Antiochus initiated. Other reasons suggest as well for the institution of the Haftorah. There's some sources there. We know that for public Torah reading, only a kosher Sefer Torah written on a scroll may be used. The same is true for the reading of the Megillah Esther on Purim. What is the halacha with respect to the Haftorah? The Lavush reasons that the reading of the Haftorah is no different and should require a scroll of Haftarot written on parchment. Those of you who've been to the great synagogue in Jerusalem have seen that. They have every Haftarah on a scroll, and the Haftarah is read from a scroll. He was therefore troubled by the prevalent custom to read the Haftarah from printed Chumoshim. The Lavush, Tamati Kol Yom, he says, I wondered all my life, I never saw a Haftarah written on a scroll. Megillah Esther is written B'tzibur, so is the Haftarah. Kaya nearly Shein Yotzim B'tzibur Klal B'Kriyas Haftorah Shekor Mekul Moshe Manid Fosim. He has a doubt whether the tzibur is going to be Yotzei, the reading of the Haftorah, if it's read from a printed chumash. Even she'ein ichtavim b'chol halachos hasefer Torah. Even she'ein ichtavim b'chol halachos hasefer Torah b'Megillah v'tzarchiyah. Printed chumashim don't have all the laws of a sefer Torah Megillah, so the Levush says it needs thought. The Taz argues that there's no halachic difference between a scroll of Haftorahs and a printed chumash. Originally, neither were even allowed to be produced, as each book of the Nevi'im was only supposed to be written in its entirety. However, already in the time of Chazal, it was difficult for some communities to write all the books of the Tanakh in their entirety. So a dispensation was given to allow the publication of a Haftorah book. And this leniency applies to printed chumashim as well. Ishtamita sugi dan nizokim daf samech in Gittin 60a, Hai Sifra daf tarta osul mikra b'Shabbos tulonitin likosik. You cannot read from a scroll where all the Haftorahs were written on it because you can't even write it. Because you can't write excerpts of Nevi'im. You got to write the whole Sefer. V'lo das la'asos l'Hashem efer torasecha. But the Gemara says we're going to get rid of a takana. Perish Rashi shein l'kol tzibur yichol slichtov Nevi'im shama kan l'shona. Rashi explained not every community has the ability to do it. It's expensive. Even if you did write them, they wouldn't have a sefer Torah. Mishum eis lasos. It's a special dispensation to do it. Achanami b'chumashim hanitfosim da'atfus yesh lo mamish din ksiva. It's like writing, printing, says the Taz. The Magen Avram argues with the Taz that print has the same status as writing. However, he writes that since this is the case, and it's now easy to print whole books of Nevi'im, there's no longer any reason to allow the use of Haftorah book, either printed or handwritten. Ite begitten daf samech she'asur lichtav Haftorah mishum masha kosu b'yordeya Simon Reish Beis Gimel mishum eis lasos Hashem efer torasecha. So a special law made. Kloimer she'en yicholos b'yad tzibur liknos l'Nevi'im shleimim. It was too expensive for the tzibur to buy a book of Navi. Now that printing is so common, Basfarim to the law, and it's cheap. So you can't just write Haftorahs alone. The Kaimelan Tfus Ksivim Ayasahi. V'imishum sheksuvim b'niyar, it's written on paper. Things can be written with many dyes. Same thing, the Magen Avram says you can write on paper. It doesn't have to be on a scroll to be rolled. So the Mishnah Berurah cites the Taz, who permits using a printed chumash. But the Magen Avraham requires using a complete book of Navi, even if it's printed. The Mishnah Berurah then writes that practically the Haftorah may be read from a Chumash if that's the only option, but ideally every congregation should have Nevi'im handwritten on parchment. The Shartzion clarifies that although the Pri Megadim refers to using a complete Tanakh, this is not to be taken literally as a complete Sefer Navi. As a complete Sefer Navi, it suffices. Even so, even using a printed version of the Mikros Gedolos edition, or Das Mikra, of the individual Navi is acceptable. Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says here. If you just have a regular chumash, like an art scroll chumash that has haftarahs in it, you can be lenient. Lovatel Chris haftarah. Ach lechatchila bevadai roi v'nochon shelachot tzibur neviim sheichtovim beklaf kedin. He says it's roi for shuls to have neviim written on a klaf. Shaz gam Hashemas tichtovim b'kedusha, names of Hashem are written big holiness. Vashen kain kishu al niyar nidfas. It's not so if it's on paper. Chenini gagroa b'kilosa. Uchaet nispashet ze bar b'kilos Yisrael v'ashrei chelkam. Even at the time the Mishnah Berurah says this is prevalent. So we already seen that there's a choice between using a scroll of haftaros, which means a scroll where only the haftaros were written, or an entire book of Navi in print. The printed Navi is preferable, according to the Tzurba M'Rabanan. Rav Ovadia Yosef rules in accordance with other Achronim who maintain that printed books are not equivalent to handwritten scrolls, to the extent that even handwritten scroll of haftaros alone is preferable. So it means if you have a scroll with all the haftaros written in it, that's even preferable to a printed one. Mitzvah lahader, as a hidur, likro haftarah mitoch sefer kosu b'ksav yad, handwritten navi b'kedusha al klaf, on parchment. Vafilu murak likud haftarah shel Shabbos Roshana. Even if it was all the haftarahs, it wasn't the whole sefer Yechezkel or sefer Yeshayahu, just all the haftarahs were written on a scroll. Ve'eno sefer navi shalom, that's preferable. Im ein sham sefer zeh adif likro haftarah min sefer navi shalom. You should read from a Tanakh of Navi, or not a Nach, of the whole like Sefer Shmuel. Rather than printed Chumashim. In our shul at Yavna, they have a special, it's just Nach, or it's just Nevi'im. It's a printed sefer with all of the, so we, you got to look up Yeshayahu Mem Zayin or whatever. But it's a printed Nach sefer. I don't know whether Rabbi Karupkin gave that psak, but we've had that in our shul for 25 years.
Is it with Nikudot?
Yes.
Oh, it is. I've never seen it.
It's not a klaf.
It's not a cloth.
No, we have 5 klafs for all the Megillot, and I read all the Megillot from klaf, except the Kohelet. But the other 4 I read from klaf. We usually wait for Bernie's son-in-law Ari to read Kohelet from a klaf, but the other 4 I read from a klaf. But the Navi is from a printed Navi. Only Nevi'im, and anyways. But Bernie, from this halacha, from what we've learned today, it's better to have a scroll. Number 2, it's better to read the haftarahs from printed books, one Navi, like Sefer Shmuel or Sefer Malachim, not like what we do.
Never seen a scroll, handwritten scroll with just haftarahs. I wonder if anyone else has. I've never seen it. That's what he's talking about.
I've seen in the Great Synagogue different scrolls, the different,
right. But not a scroll that just has haftarahs, which is one of the options.
Exactly.
Now, one of the at Tresh Yerushalayim, they had a scroll. All the haftarahs had a scroll. In fact, I had my bar mitzvah there, and I was really I wasn't ready to read it from a scroll. I didn't know it had one, but they had one for every haftarah because I didn't daven there every Shabbos. The issue for most shuls today is the cost. You used to be able to get a whole set of Tanakh scrolls at a very reasonable price. They were like a couple of $100 each. They have skyrocketed in price in the last 10 years, so very few shuls buy them. So if a shul hasn't had it for a long time, they're very unlikely to buy it because it's not where sofarim spend their time these days. So they're very expensive, which is the practical problem for that. So you don't see it.
Today, many congregations use a printed chumash or a book with all of the haftarot. There's a famous, it's red. You know what I'm talking about, The Sefer Haftorahs was a red book, and it was kept in a box, not like a slip,
Sleeve.
a sleeve, a cardboard sleeve. Most shuls had that when I was growing up, and we have the same thing, but it's in a sleeve, and it's brought out every Shabbos for the guy to lane from. And in that Sefer, for example, it's complicated. It starts, Malachim Beis, Pasuk, it has notation. Oh, this is the Haftorah for Parshas Tzav, and you start here and you end there. You know what I'm talking about? Yaakov, have you seen that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we have at Shari Tzedek. That's what we've
No, the
always
same
used.
thing, a printed Nach book.
Correct.
But that's different than the one that has the whole Tanakh in it. And
Right,
then
it
you have
doesn't
to go
have this.
picking.
It's not a whole Tanakh.
It's
It's
not a
just
whole Tanakh.
Nevi'im.
Just
for
the
specific
Nevi'im
for the
and
parsha.
Ksuvim.
No, not Ksuvim, just Nevi'im. There's no Haftorahs from
No,
Ksuvim.
no Haftorah and Ksuvim.
It's just from Nevi'im, which is Bernie, that's we've said, has to be Nevi'im.
But I would
But this
imagine
one-
there are very few shuls that people are able to read, that have somebody who's a Baal Koreh who can read all the Haftorahs from Kalaf. Yeah. I mean, I've been to
Yeah.
shuls where they are, but it's
The only
very,
place the only place I saw was the Great Synagogue in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. Again, at First Yerushalayim, they had every Haftorah was read from a cloth.
Most of
Yeah,
Oh
of
my
the
so-
God,
yeshivas-
you're talking about the 1960s. You had Jews from Europe. So what do you mean
Yeah.
you had Gedolei Olam?
Yeah.
They knew Kol HaTorah Kula by heart.
most of the yeshivas have cloth.
Again, it's extremely expensive. Although, I mean, it's not more expensive probably than two Torahs, which is one of the reasons they don't have them.
Today, many congregations use a printed Chumash or book with all of the Haftarot. Some use a Tanakh, while only a select few follow the Mishnah Berurah's recommendation of using a scroll on parchment. The Piskei Tshuva notes these customs and explains that many are lenient according to the Magen Avram. Umiyu ein laischarkesh yarbe kilos b'Yisrael ein madrim l'klal l'chazer achar nevima nichtavim b'klav k'sefer Torah. The Piskei Tshuva writes that most communities do not run after writing the Nevi'im on scrolls. V'av shebizmanenu mefazrim momen arbe avur tachshite beis hakneses. Speaking to what Rav Yaakov is saying here, even though shuls spend a lot of money on various decorations of a shul, they've seen fit not to buy this. Some don't even look for a full Tanakh. Like we said, a full Tanakh is not necessary, just Nevi'im. Nevi'im minag hakilot, asher kishem shebechol shar inyanei HaShulchan Aruch tzidudu achros l'Magen Avram. They follow the Magen Avram. Kein bazeh nagah gedvarav, sheklal lo haya takonos chachamim al kriyas haftaros mitoch sefer. Hanichtav, this is a new thing that Mishnah Berurah was mahadir. The Magen Avram was very lenient. Who may read the Haftarah? In the Gemara quoted above, we saw that the reader of the Haftarah must first read from the Torah, due to respect for the Torah, so that those present should not conclude that the honor due to the Torah and the honor due to the prophets are equal. That's the purpose of the aliyah given to the guy reading the Haftarah. We also saw that a minor may receive the aliyah of maftir, according to all views. Accordingly, the Rivar was asked about a practice to give the aliyah to a minor, but for the minor to read only the Haftarah, with an adult reading from the Torah on his behalf. The gadol gets the aliyah. And the cotton will only read the Haftarah. Even though we said the takana is that first let's read the footnote 37. In the continuation, the Piskei Tshuva suggests that many communities do not even use a Sefer Navi or Tanakh due to the opinion of the Arizal, who writes that each individual must read the Haftarah himself from the text, which would not be possible. Therefore, they rely on the Taz that any printed text of the Haftarah may be used, and everyone reads along with the one reading the Haftarah aloud. It should also be noted that aside from this, the Mishnah Berurah recommends reading along quietly with the one reading the Haftarah if he is not reading from a scroll. Okay. In addition to the Piskei Teshuvos, the custom today may also stem from the difficulty to find a Bal Kriya who is willing to read the Haftarah on a regular basis from a scroll, which requires additional preparation time. Moreover, even using a Tanakh is often difficult since the reader must know exactly where to begin and end. Plus, certain Haftarahs include additional psukim at the end for which one must skip in the text, which can cause an inconvenience or difficulty for the reader.
He's basically saying that you can read from the Haftarahs in the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, in the regular Torah form that we have.
He's justifying the custom of doing that. Yes. So back to the Rivash. The whole purpose for the guy who got the Aliyah to read the Haftarah is to show that Torah is higher. There's going to be kavod because you're getting an adult to get the Aliyah. But it's not a correct reasoning, he says. The one who reads maftir has to read the Aliyah. People will think the adult was an asafa, and he didn't read on behalf of the maftir. And again, there's lack of kavod Torah. So he doesn't agree with that practice. The Rivash concludes that having an adult, having the Aliyah, and a cotton reading the Haftarah is not appropriate. And the one who reads the Haftarah must also read the Aliyah of Maftir himself. The Beis Yosef disagrees and defends the common practice. We haven't seen this chomer of the Rivash. We've actually seen adults get the Aliyah and the cotton reads. After of Gamu Zal, Kosov B'tshuva, even the Rivash wrote, nobody listened to him. The Gambe Einai Nifluda Rosh Kosov Kishema Godel Korla Tosefes La'atzmo V'lo B'adam After, this thing that he was worried about that the Godel is going to read as an Asafa, I don't accept that. The Kivan Shivsiku B'Kadish Beina Oilam HaRishonim L'Kriyas Godel Zelek L'Meimar. There's no svor to say that. He's reading for the Haftarah. This dispute has a common practical ramification regarding calling up someone who does not know how to read from the Torah for maftir. Common practice is to be lenient in this regard. Father Beis Yosef, the Ramah mentions a slightly different situation when the maftir does not know how to read the Haftarah. That's actually very common. The fact that we get up many times in shul, or I as the Balkorah read the Haftarah for someone who's not proficient reading the Haftarah, the Ramah says it's not a problem. He says you shouldn't call up such a person for maftir if you know he can't read the Haftarah. So the Magen Avraham explains that lechatchila only one who knows how to read the Haftarah should be called up for maftir, to comply with this Rivash, that the one who receives the Maftir Aliyah must read the Haftarah himself. The Chayodim writes, in the name of the Gra, that if the Haftarah is read from a kosher scroll, there's no problem with the Bal Kriya reading the Haftarah on behalf of the Maftir, which is really a common practice. Onam HaGra Yinig B'Kilatenu, in Minhag Ashkenaz la'achar shetiknan lichtov nevim uksiv maklach. Once they started writing the Haftarah is on a klaf. In Kenu motzi kol hatzibur k'kriyas sefer Torah. The Balkor is reading it is moitzi. Lachen afilu chatchila olo mavarch b'Torah. The one called up from after makes the bracha. Mavarch birchas haftarah tchila v'sof. Vakor b'sefer Torah kor haftarah. The Balkriya reads the haftarah like in the great synagogue. The Mishnah Berurah quotes these comments of Chayyim. The reasoning is straightforward, just as the Balkriya reads on behalf of all olim, not just on behalf of the maftir. It is clear that he is not reading on his own behalf as an extra liyah. Rav Ovadia Hedaya extrapolates that even when reading from a chumash, if the Balkriya reads the haftarah on behalf of the maftir, the same logic applies, and anyone can be the maftir. Earlier in the Tshuva, Rav Ovadia argues that even the Rivash only forbids allowing a minor to read the haftarah if the adult who read maftir also recite the brachos for the liyah of maftir. Similarly, the Ramah only cautions against calling someone up from maftir who is unable even to say the bracha over the haftarah. That's not really consistent with the Chayonim. So Rav Ovadia is a contemporary, not contemporary, passed away in 1969, but you can read his biography. He was a Mizrahi Rav. It's not just the Baal Koira can be motzi everybody if, like the Gra wrote, if the haftarah is written on a klaf. That's not so. Everybody was reading it on their own. If the guy called up for the aliyah cannot read, he was embarrassed to tell the Baal Kriya. He'd make mistakes and nobody was yotzei. So they made a takon and write it on a klaf. It forced the Baal Kriya to read it. For everybody. Most people, it's hard for them to read in a scroll without nekudot. There's no embarrassment if the Baal Kriya reads the haftarah himself, because nobody can read this. That's regarding a klaf. If the takon is made that they're reading from a printed chumash, that the Baal Koreh himself should be the maftir reader. That's certainly also permitted. So you can call up anybody for an aliyah even if he doesn't read well. Because the Baal Koreh is always reading. Even somebody who knows how to read. If on occasion he wants to read it, and everyone knows he can lane well, so we don't refuse him. Many times the Talmid Chacham will come up during one of his aliyahs and he'll read his parsha. He has no problem if the Baal correlates the maftar. But he says the takana should be that the Baal Koreh reads it all the time. Otherwise, people would be embarrassed. He certainly says that even if they don't make that takana, that only the Baal Kriya lanes the haftarah, and he only does it occasionally, that Tzibur was Yotzei. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Any comments?
Yeah, there's an additional, there's an additional reading at the end there, which I think is interesting. The accepted practice, right after what you read. Page 307.
The accepted practice in some communities is indeed to allow calling up someone who cannot read the Haftorah but allowed from Haftir, even if the Haftorah is read from a Chumash. This practice can be justified based on the explanation. That's a very common practice in many shuls. It's a practice in my shul, where it's not I'm the Baal Korah in the shul. I don't read the Haftorah every time. There's some people who read their own Haftorahs. There's some people who want somebody else to read the Haftorahs. And there's sometimes where the Gabbai lanes it or somebody else lanes it. So that's the practice in our shul.
Interesting.
All right.
Okay, very good, everybody. Have a good
Have a
Yom
good Yom
Tov,
Tov,
everybody.
everybody.
Yom
Hag
Tov.
Sameach.
Excellent.
Like
Kosher
Sameach.
Sameach.
And
Thank you.
we will